Hello, Jason, and hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm tuning into this live video on a beautiful Thursday morning. Fantastic to see you, mate, and those who are tuning into this live call as well. My name's Sharon Douglas from the Earth Heroes TV platform, and today we're really excited to open up the conversation with Jason. As we've been doing in the last couple of weeks, there's some great content that Jason's really spoke to, particularly empowerment, sovereignty, freedom, community, really dropping into what it means to be living at the moment, understanding, navigating our emotions, how we can really comprehend what's going on an internal landscape so that when we come out to the external world, we have a little bit more sense of clarity, and a little bit more choice in the way that we want to navigate in which direction we want to head in our lives. And particularly now when the world seems to be speeding up at a rapid rate, many challenges and confrontational experiences and problems arising, but just remembering and returning to what Jason do often, which is the quantum movement. Go to his Facebook page. There's a huge ton of videos where he speaks a lot to this. I really highly encourage you. Something that stands out for you, really just soak it all up and absorb it in as much as possible, because it can enable you and your cells at a deep level to be able to remember what it is our natural essence and our natural instincts and our natural human behavior is capable of. And so it's really quite having this conversation, and I want to invite everyone who's watching now to just let us know where you're tuning in from around the world. Drop in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions as well for Jason in this moment that you feel would be relevant to explore, particularly right now, because what is happening on a planetary level can be very concerning. Yes, I understand what's going on in Eastern Europe right now, and on the other side of the world, and also here in Australia. We're sending out our prayers and our love. We're suffering tremendously from these erratic weather patterns that we're experiencing in this beautiful sacred land that we find ourselves on, and people losing their homes and their livelihoods, and everything is devastating. So we just wanted to send out big ripples of love from our heart to all of those who are going through a moment of pain and suffering. And it's our intention with these calls and with these conversations to a little bit more those deeper layers that we can find within ourselves to have a voice in how we respond to our external environment by bringing it back home within. So Jason, I'm really excited about the conversation again, and I think the timing is absolutely spot on and extremely relevant. And I guess just to open it up, I mean, just observing the collective disasters that we're faced with, if we could all kind of, and what I've noticed is a lot of people having this sense of like their own home where maybe the house is like a mess, let's say, and then they can kind of forget about the little problems in their home, and then that kind of makes them seem a little bit more insignificant in a sense. So what's the best tool for people to recognize and realize the importance of taking responsibility for their environment and themselves?
Hey Shay, thank you. Always to me, the most important thing is awareness, and then a consent to our own selves to be honest, and within that honesty to then move out of what we've employed for most of our life, is to protect ourselves because we believe that something is going to do wrong, harm, or hurt us in some way, because we're exposed to, and what most people speak about is the tragedy and the pain that happens in life. And for us to be able to be truly courageous is to walk our own path, and to, no matter what is going on around us, no matter what source of information is being presented to us, all of it is deceitful if it is not coming through us. And that's not to say that everyone else is deceiving you, but when we start to take other people's opinions, other people's perspectives, other people's ideals, and we start to adopt them as our own, that's when we start to deteriorate the very existence of our own purpose and meaning in life. Because for me, awareness, many people now are going through what some may say is a tragedy. They may have, some sadly may have lost their own life, that they may have lost the lives of animals or things that are dear to them, or even possessions in their own home that are significant to them. But one of the things that can come from that is we can focus on that, or in those particular moments, there is a great amount of presence that people come to at that moment to identify what is most important to them. The challenge is that we've learned to do this and give ourselves permission to be present to what is most important in our life, mainly through the invitation of tragedy. And that can be a very big awakening, that in that particular tragedy, when I've seen it again and again and again, and I start to become aware of how I'm creating that, rather than it happening to me. But if I start to see how I'm aware of how I'm creating it, and then from that particular point, I make a choice at that moment that I don't want to experience this anymore. And from that tragedy, I then decide I'm going to do things differently. And it's in that, excuse me, it's in that particular moment that we can start to make big changes and big shifts in our own life. And the key is, can we continue to do that whilst the tragedy is not there? Can I still put myself first, or what my greatest needs, what my greatest experience, what the most fulfilling thing for me to do in this particular moment? Am I still able to do that when the tragedy or the crisis is not present? And that's ultimately, where our awareness, it doesn't matter what other people are experiencing or what they're going through. The truth of it will be is when I go into my own point of reference, and I want to go into that a little bit beyond this, but when I go into my own point of reference, is that true for me? The pain that someone's going through, is it true for me? Because it would take a lot of courage for an individual to see someone else suffer, but to understand their own truth is not to buy into that, is not to be a part of that, but at this moment is to continue on the most significant thing that I have put all of my attention in to bring forward in this life, because my existence here is to create, not to react. My existence here is to create, not to innovate, not to oppose, but to move into a place where things in life happen with a way that they support me. Now, for many of us, because we've been focused on in our life being part of a community, and where we've learned to get love and attention is through the graces and validation of others. That's all well and good, but communities that are based upon that become very reactive, they become very weak, and they become easily manipulated. And they become manipulated because the individuals within that don't have their own independence. And ultimately, independence to me is being dependent upon what's within you. And that is the source of information, the information that's moving through you, that's arising through you. Where is that coming from? And to me, this is the first port of call in our own life, and should be in the very nature of our existence and our society, is to first allow an individual to become liberated from all of the outside noise, to start to listen to their own source. Now, to me, that is the absolute point of freedom, where one individual can know without doubt, without even needing to think about it, without considering or ruminating on maybe I should or I shouldn't, but to go to a point of reference within myself that I know to be true, that I know to be pure, that I know to be of me, that allows me to guide everything that I am, and why I came here for, to remember that in that particular relationship. When that is not present, what I will take on is this relationship with the mind. And the mind is all of the knowledge and all of the information, perspectives, and things that are happening outside of me. They're the opportunity, they're the invitation that we can step into at any particular moment. But if we don't have a point of reference, if we don't develop that, not just occasionally, not just through some ethereal space, not just through an occasional meditation, but as a habit that doesn't take me away to need to have ceremony in order to find that. That is the basis of the living of life. For many of us, because we don't know how to let go, because we don't know how to release trauma, tragedy, emotions, and these types of things, is we find most of the living of our life is trudging through the crises and the challenges and the opposition. That needs to be, to me, like just a very rudimentary space, like going to the bathroom each day and releasing the things that no longer serve us at a physical level, in the same way that we need to do that at a energetic level. The things and the information that we're taking on that are compromising or are not pure, to me, and therefore, in its own truth, if they're not pure, they're toxic. And it's not toxic because they're evil, it's toxic because they're not of me. And therefore, we can start to look at being compassionate and doing what's right by others in order to receive the love that we can't give ourselves. So what with all the stuff going on in the world at the moment, what it's presenting is a great opportunity to find truth and discernment. And look, it's not part of my world, but conversations I've had with some people lately is to say they just don't know what the truth is anymore. You know, that it kind of makes sense that it could be this going on over there and it could be that, but maybe they're doing it for these reasons. The whole very nature of, if you want to control someone, you just keep them confused. And the way that you change that confusion in your own self is you have a point of reference where your truth is determined by you. And that is, you know, getting past all of these ideologies of science, of law, of health, of psychology, of finance, or all of these particular pillars of the world that are there to identify that there's someone and other people you need to be dependent upon their opinion, their perspective, their expertise, because you don't have it. That is the illusion. But to be able to transcend that within our own self comes from a point of what is true for me in this moment. And there's a really important point to this where most get stuck is, yes, I might have had a conscious experience in my life where I can tap into something within me. The degree that I can discern that and confirm that to be absolutely true isn't something that just happens in a moment, because it's being able to be aware of all the toxicity, and then I can wade through that and be able to dismiss that to get to that source within me. Now, if I was to tap into whatever the source of information that I rely upon or that I connect to within me, if I am not predisposed in a state of absolute trust that I'm going to take action on the information before I receive the information, I'm compromising that very connection, and I'm suggesting that I don't that I don't trust it in the first place. Because to be in a full and complete state of trust, if I was to tap into something that I believe to be of pure wisdom and of significant and infinite intelligence, well, there isn't any point for me to reject what is coming. So if I'm not already of the decision before I get the information from myself that I'm going to act upon it absolutely and to the fullest extent, what I will receive in perfect request is information that I'm not prepared to act upon. It might be insightful. It might be, wow, that's really great. I'm going to do that. But watch the habit is the information comes and then we find reason to not act upon it because that was the information we requested, because I hadn't yet made the decision to act before I received the information. And that's what most of us do. We live in a place where we're getting information and then we're thinking, oh, well, I might act, or I might do this, or I might do that. And we consider the future and the consequences, which are all an illusion. When we actually go there, we find out the things that we don't know. And that's life, that's the living, it's the action and the expression of our very existence to move forward and beyond that. Not get caught up in what I should be doing, what the right thing is to do. And look, I did see, some friends of mine that were, very much of all for the lockdowns. And now they're saying that, we've got to liberate, and the freedoms of people in Ukraine are being taken away. And not even being able to stand up for their own kids because they were perceived that that's the right thing to do. But now they're suddenly flipped on the other side, and there's a confusion. And the contradiction and just the pinball of life of being, well, what's the right thing to do here? What's the right thing to do here? What will receive the most amount of brownie points or the most amount of acceptance and love and appreciation from others if I do the right thing here? I'm going to go with the common answer. I'm going to go with the most popular answer because that's what I've been, learned to do. I just wanted to say one thing on a clarification. Confusion is the precursor to abundance. The problem is we don't know how to navigate confusion. Confusion is just having too many paths available that I'm prepared to make a decision upon. There's an abundance of pathways ahead of me, and it's about me at that particular point. The only time I stay in confusion is because I don't take or have the understanding of how to make a choice that serves me, because I don't have a reference point that is me.
So good there, Jason. Thanks for sharing. Absolutely spot on. I love what there's so much in that what you shared, and I hope you guys who are listening really comprehended the notion that you're speaking to, particularly with everything going on in the external, how we can remember to bring it back into the internal. And one area that I just want to bring it back to, what you mentioned around the information of tragedy and how that can be used as a tool for personal growth. And I really love that, you're coming from this space of awareness that the stimulus or the sensation of emotion that is being experienced, such as the devastation and the tragedy and the suffering and the pain, can be used as a tool in order to help, or a catalyst to propel us forward and break through of that limitation of our own perception of how we're experiencing that our lives. And so I really want to hone in on that piece that you're because when and I just know from my own experience, like when I was going through challenges, shaming myself and feeling guilty and feeling really upset and having those tough experiences of emotion that are running through my body, that really, there is absolutely no way that someone outside of myself could tell me, oh, that's all for a purpose, and that's all to help you. That's information for you. And in the moment when I'm in the story and I'm stuck in that perpetual cycle of my own stuff, I am just so absorbed in it that it's not until it goes deep that it takes me to that point where I realize that's like, fuck, this, like, I want to change this. And this is not fun, And then making those decisions to break free of that is that sense of ultimate liberation and freedom, but it has to do with that internal, inwards looking of what is actually happening in here. And I didn't even want to accept it or acknowledge that I was feeling those emotions, because I just felt I couldn't even put it into words. I didn't quite have the language to be able to articulate the density of the emotions, but I had just felt down, or I felt heavy, or I felt like I didn't unmotivated and didn't want to get up and active and move and enjoy. But it wasn't until reflection, looking back at myself, where it's like, wow, that's what I was stuck in. And so I'd really love to hear from you, particularly on really decoding the information of energy through emotion, and then also how we can really look at the language of that, that matrix decoding, to break free from any stuck codes of emotion that can keep us bound into that experience, and then like transcending it to come out that side and really be in abundance, as you spoke to, really step out of confusion into abundance. And is it like that easy? Is it just a change of perception, or like integrating the whole human being experience, like the emotional and the physical, all into one kind of being?
I think that one of the greatest tricks is that people are looking for something beyond themselves always. And they're looking for something that's not there. And, we're told to go within and all of these types of things. But for many of us, that's a separated practice to living life. When, meditations, breath work, and these types of things are all very powerful things, but they're a separated practice of life, and they can bring temporary supplementation of my experience and my feeling, and that's great. And if that's a win for you, well, it's better maybe than not doing that at all. But ultimately, that requires is a continuation of inputting in order to get an output. because you're working against the very nature of what you are, that just is what it is. And until we understand that, we're going to continue to look for remedies to the problem that we perceive, when the problem we perceive is only a condition of our disintegration or disconnection from ourselves. So I'm not saying that this should absorb your life in every single moment. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying that you should have, you know, for all of us, that there should be an hour a day that is just as important as any other thing that you deem to be important, is that you sit in your own space and consider, what do I want to create? And when you're considering what it is that you want to create, what's going to come up is all of your resistances. What's going to come up is all of the oppositions and all the reasons why you can't. But it's to recognize you actually employed that protector in your life because you perceived things were wrong, or that you needed help, or that you don't want to go through pain again. So when you then suddenly choose in your life to fulfill yourself and start to step into creation, what is going to occur is this, let's just say, this bodyguard that you've employed to keep you safe. The loyalty of that particular relationship that's been there for the entirety of your life, that you know that at times you might have thought, it saved my life. You know, I'm so happy I didn't do that, because what happened when people went on that, you know, it didn't work out for them. And I'm so happy that I decided not to. And at times we create this relationship with this thing outside of ourselves. But when we start to want to create, what's really important is a process that people could apply. Sit with yourself, even if it's an hour a week, but sit with yourself and write into what it is you want to create. And the first thing that may come up might be just the very confrontation of, I don't know. But I would suggest that for me, the more I've learned, and you hear this a lot from people that go deep into themselves, is the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. Start from, you don't need to learn a lot to realize you don't know. Start from the absolute truth that you don't know. Stop playing the facade. Stop playing the game that, no, I've learned that. No, I've done that. No, I've been through that. Those who know do not go. Those who know stay exactly where they are, and they'll continue to keep going around in circles because they know, because they're shutting down by request their openness to the receiving of everything that's around us and available to us at any particular time in life. So when you sit down and you let's just save your own self, and you give yourself a definitive time and space that you prioritize and make important, creates a habit and creates a confirmation of your own importance. You sit and you start writing what it is you want to create. And those first couple of days, maybe, I've got no idea. Oh, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that. When you start to get to a point, and it might be 2-3 days into it, 2-3 times into it, might be even beyond that, is to realize that when you have an inspiration, what quickly follows it for most of us with that relationship that we've been maintaining in opposition to ourselves, is we have this inspiration, and then what immediately comes is the resistance. Why I can't do it, why I shouldn't do it, why it didn't work for that person. And suddenly all of that information in the upwelling of the inspiration, all the reasons why you can't, suddenly become presented to you, because that's the common dynamic that's playing out. And when you can see that, not the information that's coming out, but I've got a dynamic here that whenever I start to step forward, I'm presented with all the things of why I shouldn't step forward, because the choice I've made is to not be myself. And if I'm not going to be myself, that means I stay exactly where I am, in avoidance of myself. So when you're writing out about creation, let it be as clumsy as what it is. Once you finish doing that each day, come to a point of completion, of going, all right, that's where I've got up to. So when you come back the next day, you continue to work from that point, not a whole separate, I wonder what I'm going to go through today. Build upon what you've done, create progress, a relationship with what you're doing. But one very important thing, have a separate sheet of paper to the side as you start to consider this inspiration coming through you, that when a resistance comes up, be disciplined, be a disciple of your own self, which is what discipline ultimately is. Discipline's not forcing something. It's in the integration and surrender to be the follower of your own leadership. And at that particular point, when the resistance comes up, write it out, give it full expression, give it its own court and its own space. Do not have it in the creation space. Get a separate piece of paper and write all your resistance out. Acknowledge them, put them to the side, and come back to the creation. Don't keep living in this primordial soup of trying to create whilst there's resistance in the same space and keep inviting it in. Acknowledge it's going to come. When it comes, get it, put it to the side, write it out, give it all the space and the stage that it needs. but close that book and then come back to what I'm doing. And if the resistance comes up again, do it again. Because what you're starting to do at that point is organize energy. And the organization of energy is the highest expression of energy. Energy goes where it will be most organized, where it can then express itself the most. If you look at some of the financial structures around the world, like in the insurance companies, that the organization that they have to such a degree allows money to come in and flow through it. Whatever their agenda may be doesn't need to resonate with you, but to take example, if that's something that you're aspiring to, that you want to have greater wealth in your life, and not just financially in any way, well, you've got to determine how you want that to be organized and experienced and expressed through your life, because energy is formless. It comes into form when it comes into your space. So things like lower level intelligences and lower level conversations of, and I'm not talking about this as individuals, I'm talking about the type of conversation that we all get caught up in and driven a lot by the misteachings of psychology, is to say that emotions are something that we need to understand or deal with, that to work with our emotions is only going to continue this perpetual loop that you're going through. And it might offend some people, but I'm not here to be concerned by people's offense. What I'm here to share is a way that you can continue to move forward rather than going in this temporary loop and living in a life between pain and relief. And when I have relief, I start to feel good. And then I stop doing the very thing that got me to that state of relief, only to go back to pain and then to be stimulated again to take action, to then move into relief again. And I sit between this loop of life where I have these ups and downs. Rather than a continuation and a perpetuation that when I get to the peak in my life, that's when I become triggered. That's my 0 point. That's the point that I start to really start to live. So my light in the wind just fell over. So I've just caught it. But it's to understand that the emotions are feelings. And those particular feelings is that when we are separated from ourselves, we have the capacity to deal with a small amount of information and generally only one thing at a time. And when we can only deal with one thing at a time, what happens is, as individuals, we become very easily stressed. And when we have these energies come through us, rather than having the full experience of life in every single frequency moving through us at once, equally love and disdain to joy to tragedy, whatever those things may be, to allow all of them to move through is in the acceptance of them. When we are separated from ourselves, we have experiences where I become sad. I'm no longer me, but I'm sad. I'm no longer me, but I'm happy. And the thing is, we don't allow ourselves to integrate that within us and experience that within us. We become the thing rather than allowing to move through us at any particular point of being. The concept of the ego is a separation of our own self and breaking down the enormity and the significance of what we are into small perceivable parts, because it's in condition of the way we approach life, in looking at aspects of it rather than looking at all of it. Rather than looking at the symptoms, it's going back down to the causal level. And the irony is, and that's something that we go through and teach, is that forget about dealing with the symptoms. They're going to be there. And as soon as you address one symptom, another one's going to come, and forget about it. But it's painful. So what? Everything's going to be painful in your life, and it's going to become more painful till it comes to a stage where it takes your life if you continue to keep buying into that relationship. But to find peace and to find ease, and then to have the responsibility in our own life, first becomes responsibility is not my ability to respond, but it's a response to the understanding of what my true ability is. And when I come to understand and study and be aware and present to not just this, generic statement that I'm an infinite being having a spiritual being having a physical experience, or what physical being, whatever the words are, I don't pay much credence to them, because words ultimately don't mean anything if they're not expressed and they're not demonstrated in that particular way. There's an incongruency there. And that's where many of us can get caught up in the statements of life that seem to bring a level of inspiration and joy and love. Yeah, they bring it to the surface for that moment. But can I maintain it? I can't maintain it if I'm separated from myself. I can't maintain it if I'm not present to myself. I was, you know, the very notion of presence, and if we get rid of opinions, overlays, templates, religious dogma, and anything else that's there that people buy into as a belief system beyond self-belief and an understanding of themselves, these are all layers, I suppose, that we go through in our own way to find ourselves. But what I'm suggesting is you're already there, start with you. But we've been led on a merry path and a confusing path in order that we need to go through certain layers of consciousness before we find ourselves, which I could say is complete crap. Let's just say we are what we are already. To understand how to move into that is as simple as understanding the things that we are overwhelmed by, the things we are stressed by, the things we're trying to fix. They all occur for one small reason, is that we do not know how to experience real ease, and that's to release and to be able to free our energetic state, our energetic being from the clouds, from the junk that we place upon top of it so that we can never hear it. It's the stuff that, because we don't know ourselves, we seek these other references, these other points of reference in our life to use as some sort of point of confirmation as how we could or should act. So to get down, I suppose, deeper into that is just to consider that me as an individual, when I am faced with tragedy and trauma, and let's just say someone else's to begin with, I then find within myself this capacity to put away all these things that I thought were a priority, that I thought were important. Maybe a relationship, it may be a workspace, it may be anything that may be, hanging out by a thread. But suddenly I now have to go and help other people who are now in tragedy. What that's exposing is that when I make something important in my life, I will prioritize that above anything. So if you don't know what you're here to create or how you want to create it or what that even looks like, it will never become a priority because it will not become obvious to you as far as what to do or how to do that. But when people are being flooded, when people are being afflicted by war and that's being presented to you, well, then that's obvious. Okay, I know what I need to do here. Until we give ourselves the space to liberate away from our thinking and start to consider what it is that we truly want and have the audacity and the indulgence to even just make a time just for me. And I would suggest to you the irony of this is that when it happens, when you start to do that, every single thing that has stopped you from doing it before will start to come into your space. An emergency from certain friends, an emergency from children, emergency in the workspace. Whatever it is that you've caused to prioritize in your hierarchy of needs are going to come when you choose to step out and step into your own space. And if you can understand that, then when it occurs, you don't need to react to it. You can acknowledge it, smile at it and go, well, of course that's happening because that's the way I used to live. I used to be at the beck and call of every other tragedy that was happening in other people's lives ahead of my own. And this consent that I've made as ahead of me is that whenever I go to put myself first, all of these other things will occur. And the irony and the illusion and the hypnosis that most of us are under is that every time I go to move forward, Jesus, all these things happen. Of course they do, because I'm not remaining present. I'm not undoing and releasing the consent that I gave in many years of my life to doing things a particular way, which is called a habit. And a habit is just effortless action, no thinking. In a habit, we have absolute certainty and confidence. But how many of the habits that I have support and create an environment in my life where it's just normal, where it's native, that I am brilliant? How many of us have an environment that we've cultivated where we want brilliance, but we keep chasing after it rather than creating an environment where brilliance is the only option? There's a suggestion from certain practitioners that cancer cannot survive in an alkaline environment. So they stop dealing with the cancer and they start creating the alkaline environment. It's the same in our own life. The condition of what you're in, whether it's war, whether it's flood, whatever it may be, and as tragic and as compassionate as anyone can be, ultimately it's not going to cause that particular situation in your life to change unless you understand how you created it. And if we keep getting caught on the symptoms or the end result, we're going to stay at the surface. And when we can start to consider all of what we are and indulge that and get to a point where it's, I get it. I can see that. I can receive it. There's nothing here to do me harm. Everything here is trying to support me. The only thing that I feel resistance about is me pushing away because I'm under some belief that I am not capable, that I don't understand, that I don't know, that I don't deserve. It's just a consider, Shay, for me, that belief clearing and all of this work that people want to do upon themselves, unless they first are present and connected to themselves, none of that work will make any long-term difference. Things will be released, but then they'll come back in another form. It's not until we as an individual to understand the condition of my environment is when I'm disconnected and disintegrated and not present to life, I will have to be challenged by my beliefs because they exist in a disconnected state. I will be challenged by pain because that exists in a disconnected, resistant state. I'll be challenged by a lack of love, tumultuous relationships, blah, 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 and every other experience that we individually may have. It's not the thing that's happening, it's the environment that I've created around me from within myself. But when I'm integrated, there's no such thing as a belief. There is only self-belief, and it's a confirmation and a requirement of that environment that I can create for myself. So when we do that and stop focusing on the results and start focusing on the environment, the ecology within us, things can rapidly change. And not can, they absolutely do. There's a definitive way of doing that consistently and regularly, but we never have to be fearful of such ridiculous profit-making ideas as disease. I mean, consider, people talk about big industries in the world, disease is the biggest one by far. And I don't just mean what happens in hospitals, I mean in a disease with my own self that I don't understand. So therefore I keep chasing. I need other people to tell me what to do, to show me what to do, to give me what I need, because look to the core, or what I would say within all of us, what's the legacy that I want to leave in this place? Do I want to just get through and survive? Or do I want to continue to utilize the infinite because I believe it to be infinite? If it's infinite, I can't be greedy. If it is truly infinite in any particular way, well, greed cannot be a possibility. There is the inability and lack of receiving that is the only thing that exists. And that receiving is then restricted because whenever I'm disconnected, I can't receive because I don't exist. Until I actually allow myself to become present to all of what I am, then we can stop going through this idea of philosophy and understanding the meaning and existence of life and where God fits and what the universe is. Is there a solar system? Are we encased in this particular area? That is only relevant to you. It's not a common conversation. It should be one that is, if it's relevant or intriguing to you, that's your conversation. But the reason we don't have it with ourselves most often is we haven't cultivated. And to me, that's my mission, is to cultivate that not just in people, but in kids. So that when kids go through, you want to see a real shift in life. And that's what I'm encouraging at the moment, is to get to a place where we create an environment where kids learn this capacity as an absolute. Then the generation will change. Then the planet, the world, whatever it is that we live in, will change because people stop needing to go through tragedy to have an awakening, because they come to a place of first understanding what they are and stop fighting against themselves and come from a place, a willing place of, I don't know.
That's massive, Jason. I love what you shared, and there's so much in that, guys. So for those who are watching, just to go back and just rewatch that last 20 minutes, because there's so much quality in that, and understanding, what it takes to move forward. And what I'm hearing, Jason, is that in a larger level, on a kind of mass consciousness level, that a reframing of course, ourselves and the way that we view ourselves and the self-belief that we have, but also integrating that into our teachings, into the whole cultural way of raising younglings into the world, and something that you're doing in a beautiful way, to bring this educational piece to the people on a mass level. And what you're doing with the present moment experience is so powerful, because so many of us have this simple fundamental truth, and that's what you're saying. So many people getting confused around what's the truth out there, who do I believe, what do I trust. and so many forgetting to remember the internal truth, the truth of who they are, the truth of their being. And what you're doing with the mission that you have in the world is bringing that remembering back to the people, so they can feel their own self-brilliance, their own self capacity to be more and to be in the moment and really comprehend their own magnificence. That's what I just love about what you share, particularly with the present moment experience, that I want to touch on a little bit more around what that encapsulates, because you've shared, again, we've been chatting for the last 40 minutes today, almost this Thursday morning, and Jason's just shared some gold, absolute gold, not just to just like say, oh, yeah, that's a great, phrase, but how do we integrate that to our own lives? And everyone's got their own unique story, their own unique moment of tragedy, unique experience of life, but ultimately humans on these, we're all mammals on this planet trying to navigate our lives, acting often out of survival rather than thriving in the world. So what does it take for us to, evolve through the times of just scraping by and looking for the challenges and the problems, and then moving our lens and moving towards having abundance and freedom and focusing on the wins and seeing how we're growing together. And what Jason is sharing, particularly with the present moment experience, is ways that we can not wait for something to come in the future to come into our field to experience, but actually realize that and experience it now in this moment. Not just like on the mat doing yoga or meditating, but as we're living, breathing, and navigating with our relationships in our lives and cooking food and doing the everyday monotonous task, and realizing that we have it already. And so, Jason, if you wanted to just like unpack a little bit more on what the present moment is and how people can enjoy or experience for themselves what this really feels like, not just a retreat experience, but for their life.
Just, I suppose, add that there's so many different modalities or ways of doing things. Like you mentioned a little bit there about meditation, yoga, and there's not just a little difference. There's an absolute significant difference in life. Is that if I'm doing yoga or I'm doing meditation in some way to address or fix something within me, I'm denying the very experience of it to begin with. Now, if I'm doing it because I need to feel more whole or more complete, that may assist in that particular way and bring a level of that into your life. But if the reason for doing it is not just absolute pleasure, we start to put this expectation on something in our own life that we need it to provide something for us, rather than just having the pleasure and the joy within our own self to experience it as it is, to experience it, not to do it to remedy or fix. And that's where meditation has been quite bastardized, is, to fix a condition, to rebalance my life, to reintegrate myself. The very nature of our own self is just to express ourselves, and every single thing around us is to express itself. Now, one of the things that I suppose I looked at is that years ago I used to do a deep, remote healing and get some miraculous outcomes. And to me, started to learn and see how simple that really was, that I felt, was so confused, and there's infrastructure and billions of dollars in society set around trying to save people's lives from these self-inflicted conditions, which, again, so it's not meant to offend anyone, but to consider that a condition in your life is self-inflicted, but it's the only way it is. And until we accept that we created the cancer, it didn't just happen at one particular point, that we created the arthritis, that we created the Parkinson's, until we actually understand how we did that, well, that's going to offend us. But once we do realize that, we then have got the same particular thread to be able to pull to undo that. But whilst we continue to keep fighting against it as if it's something fighting against us, we're going to have a problem. So one of the things that we really focus on with present moment is how you actually lose your mind and how to do that deliberately. You know, some people fear this. I recently was called to do a bit of a journey, and when I went on that journey, I was amazed at how many people came back nearly just that I thought would be very open to something like that. Well, no, I don't know if I'll ever come back. That the fear of what might happen when you're confronted with something that is altering of your state, the lack of control that may be there. But one of the things is, in losing our mind is finding our independence. And when one's not there, like, our independence and the mind can't coexist. We can have the illusion of it, but we become something by fighting against something else. That I am free because I'm against those people who oppress me. Well, when those people stop oppressing you, well, how will you then determine your freedom? So with present moment, it's kind of in our own diagnosis of ourselves, and diagnosis as a word is just to separate the truth. When we start to diagnose or find a solution or a remedy to something that we perceive as wrong, we're separating the truth. There isn't anything wrong to begin with. But to me, it's always coming back into a state of, how do I just get to that starting point of integration again and again and again until that becomes autonomic, effortless, habitual? Because if I can get that starting point all the time, then the conditions of me not being integrated, not being present, well, they're no longer there distracting me. They're only there distracting me because I'm not quite sure what to do with my life at the moment. So I get stimulated by a whole range of outside sources that seem interesting and intriguing. So present moment is about someone being able to release what was, to accept what is, and to create what will be. And ultimately, that's the most important part, is to learn. If I could say just this last thing, that everything that afflicts you or restricts you in your own life is just the things that you hold on to because you don't understand you already have them. And the way that you have them is perfect for you, but we hold on to them because we think they're brighter and shinier, because we don't understand how to let go of. We don't understand how to release. Some of us learn to do that through screaming in the bush. Some of us learn to do that through a release, a ceremony of some sort. But when we become reliant upon those outside things as the only source, we put way too much expectation on the beautification of an experience rather than being able to release as an autonomic motion of life. That when we see something, it comes to us and we can release it in that moment. And what I'm suggesting here is not something that you learn to overlay as a template or a process in your life. It's learning how to do it your way. Well, my life, probably 30 years of questioning and answering and looking at how can you actually get something where people can learn something but come out completely different by applying and learning the same thing. And that to me has been something that I've been very blessed to become present to and observe. But our presence to ourselves is very much the heaven that is spoken about. Our hell is that life between pain and relief where we're not in control and we're living and operating with dead souls, dead entities, dead experiences, which is everything from the past, everything that's been, everything that was. When we start to raise the dead is when we live by the past, when we experience the past. To be able to release it, let it go, so that we can create the environment where we are here right now, then we can make change in the way that we choose.
Thanks, Jason, for sharing. And for those who are tuning in right now and who've been watching this video, I just want to thank you for joining us. And that if you wanted to jump on and Jason has an opportunity coming up really shortly, we'll drop it in the comments section. If you got the link there, Jason, we'll just share that around. But also, guys, check out, Jason and I've been doing these conversations over the last couple of months. Every so much quality. Just go to Earth Heroes TV. In the description, you'll find the link, and you'll be able to go and watch back some of these fantastic moments of really comprehending what it takes to and integrate the change within ourselves necessary to make those big changes within the world. Because when times are challenging and there is a lot of tragedy and painful moments that is we're experiencing on a planetary level. Like, no one's exempt from all of this in this moment, but we can be empowered to remember and return to that essence of our truth that gives us the freedom that we're so deeply searching and looking for. That's already there, as Jason mentioned. So guys, this is really huge, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. Let us know what let us know where you're at and what you're experiencing, and we just want to send you out big love, and hopefully, if you are going through a challenging time with what's happening in the regions, that you're able to find remedies and support and help to be able to navigate through all of that. So Jace, thanks for joining me. I'll chat with you very, very soon. Is there anything else you want to share with everyone?
Just to say thank you, and what we shared there with the creation exercise is when you start to move forward in life, be patient. Don't look to the reactions or needing some remedy or some pill that's going to fix it straight away. When you start to step into your own life and look for a destination, remember the destination is the journey. It's the willingness to be moving, living, exploring, adventuring. And it's so very important to have patience, that when something arises that you would previously react to, observe that and just allow yourself to move through it. And, we might then just find ourselves living in a world where there's a great amount of freedom, because not people scream for it or shout for it, because people express it in the way that they live.
So good. Appreciate you and joining us. Look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you.